the first part of this lesson, we discovered that the way the President of the United States is elected is a little strange. Whoever gets the most citizens' votes does not necessarily win the presidency. We also learned that only 538 people get to actually vote for the president. Everyone else only gets to vote on who those 538 people are going to be. Each state gets to choose a small number of people called electors to vote for the president. When the electors from each state are added together, a total of 538 electors are the only ones whose votes really matter. So how many votes does a candidate need to be elected president? The Constitution says that the candidate needs more than half of the 538 votes. Now, half would be 269, but the candidate needs more than half. Therefore, 270 is the number of electors' votes that a person needs to become president of the United States. Now, here's why the system is so strange and a little complicated. A candidate can get 1 million less votes than his opponent on election day and still become the president of the United States. How can that be? Okay, pay careful attention to this. Let's suppose that Mickey Mouse is running against Donald Duck. And suppose that 2 million more people in California voted for Mickey Mouse than Donald Duck. If that happened, Mickey Mouse would get the 55 electors in California to vote for him at the Electoral College. But suppose at the same time, Donald Duck won every other one of the 49 states, but just by 1 vote in each state. In that case, Donald Duck would get 483 electors to vote for him in the Electoral College. So think about this. Although more than 1 million people voted for Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck won in the Electoral College by a vote of 483 to just 55. That would be a blowout. So a presidential candidate shouldn't worry as much about how many people are going to vote for him as how many states they're going to win. It's already happened several times in American history that the candidate who got the most votes on election day lost the presidency. The last time it happened was in the year 2000 when George Bush beat Al Gore. Man, that was a wild election. Now here's what happened. After election day, we knew this for certain. Al Gore had won 267 electors, and George Bush had only won 246. But neither had 270, so there was no winner just yet. The problem was that there were still 25 electors that we were unsure about, the ones from the state of Florida. Whoever got those 25 electors would be over 270 and would win the presidency. The voting in Florida was really, really close. Although the initial count went to Bush by an extremely narrow margin, in the days following the election, Florida began a series of recounts, double-checking to figure out for sure who won. But as they began to recount, they started to argue over what actually counts as a vote. If a voter was supposed to punch a hole in a card next to the candidate's name, what if the hole was only halfway punched? What if the punched hole was still hanging on the paper? What if the hole wasn't fully punched through but just dented? There was also a question about a ballot that seemed a little misleading. The second name on one side of the ballot was Albert Gore, but the second hole punch on the ballot was a vote for a third-party candidate named Pat Buchanan, whose name was on the other side of the ballot. Buchanan got a large number of votes in an area where he was very unpopular, and something just didn't seem right. Well, these matters all ended up in the courts. The Florida State Supreme Court decided that the recounts should continue until it was very clear who won. The problem was that time was running out. The current president, Bill Clinton, was no longer constitutionally permitted to continue as president after January 20th. And certainly America couldn't be without a president. The Electoral College had to submit their votes on December 18. Just a week before that, Florida was still undecided. On December 12th, then, the U.S. Supreme Court intervened and decided that the first count would have to suffice. Bush won. Though Gore probably had more than sufficient reason to be upset, he understood the necessity of the situation, and he knew that the Supreme Court's authority is the highest that the Constitution recognizes in matters of controversy. Gore submitted to the decision of the Supreme Court and conceded Bush's victory in the Electoral College, 271 to 266, with one person not voting. One thing is for certain, though, about the 2000 election. Gore got more than 500,000 more Americans to vote for him than Bush did. But it didn't matter, because the electors' votes in the Electoral College are really all that matter. For a long time, some people have complained about this system. Way back in the 1830s, President Andrew Jackson said, "Hey, this system isn't fair and should really be changed." Many people have agreed with Jackson over the years. For example, Hillary Clinton feels the same way today. You might even think that this system is a little unfair. Here's the problem. In order to change the Constitution, an amendment has to be made. And in order to make an amendment, you need 3 out of every 4 states to agree to the amendment. But the states that don't have a lot of people living in them don't want the system to change, or the candidates might ignore them and just focus on the big population centers like New York City and Chicago. Of the 50 states in America, more than 1 out of 4 of them are what would be called small states. And they would never agree to getting rid of the Electoral College. But until they do, the Constitution will never be changed. I asked my colleague, Dr. Greg Doman at Columbus State University, how the small states can prevent the Constitution from being amended to do away with the Electoral College.
So in order to amend the Constitution, you would need 3/4 of the states to ratify an amendment to the Constitution. And since there are so many small states, 3 electoral votes, 7 electoral votes, even 10 electoral votes, it does not do them anything in their best interest to change that. So it's best to keep the system as it is.
So there it is, and that's how it's going to be. Hopefully you're now a little more clear on what is definitely a confusing and unclear idea in the United States Constitution, the Electoral College. I'm Dr. Richard Gardiner from Columbus State University, and this has been a Muscogee County School District podcast, the Electoral College.